Hi, everybody. Welcome to the program. I'm Julianna Forlano. This is Moving Biden Left. I'm here with my co-host for today, Charles Lenchner of act.tv. Charles, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about this new project, about this new show that we're doing. We have a couple of segments for you today. The first, we're going to talk about what it takes to push Biden left. The Sunrise Movement has been working on that. Our second segment is our progressive movement headlines to let you know what's going on in the progressive movement. There is a lot. And in our third segment, we're going to be talking about, well, some shenanigans with Rahm Emanuel. I'm going to leave that to Charles to take on. But first, we're going to start again with our Sunrise, the Sunrise Movement. Earlier this month, Sunrise Movement, progressive climate organization, staged a protest outside the White House to pressure President Biden to reconsider his bipartisan negotiation strategy, if you can call it that, with Republicans, of course, over their infrastructure plans. The public demonstration represents a striking tactical and tonal shift from the organization's prior approach to the administration. My co-host, Comrade Charles Lenchner of act.tv, was on the scene, and I am happy to talk with you about this. Charles, can you give us some background about what moved the Sunrise organization to take to the streets in this way?
Well, the administration is presented with what is truly a difficult dilemma. They want to pass a trillions worth of dollars in infrastructure spending. And from the administration's perspective, infrastructure means everything from climate change to roads to bridges to soft infrastructure like childcare programs to help more people, especially women, get back to work. What the Republicans are doing is saying, look, why don't you agree with us on pure infrastructure on the roads and tunnels part? And then all that other stuff, all that soft, touchy-feely stuff that you want, you can try and pass it later and see what happens. Obviously, the Republicans are hoping that only one of those bills gets passed and not the other, which would be a disaster. So groups like the Sunrise Movement have been gathering their forces and saying to Biden, look, if you don't pass this as one bill, if you don't make sure that the climate components are included in what passes, then you're not going to get your bipartisan bill on bridges and tunnels passed either. And that's the status quo right now. And we're seeing some movement with more and more Democratic senators insisting publicly to Biden that they will not help pass an infrastructure bill that ditches the climate.
We actually have some video live from the protest of the protesters and with their message to President Biden. Let's take a look at that.
Joe Biden, who are you going to stand with? Are you going to stand with us, the million-strong, multiracial, cross-class majority that elected you? Or are you going to deal with the lawmakers who put us here in the first place, who purposefully poisoned our planet, who purposefully poisoned our families, and who are purposefully poisoning our future?
We need to be talking about what the voters want, what the people who elected this administration want. And what polling clearly shows is that the Civilian Climate Corps, the American Jobs Plan, the American Families Plan are popular among voters across the political spectrum. So instead of negotiating with Republicans, why doesn't the administration listen to the voters across the country who elected them and deliver for those voters?
That's right, President Biden. Listen to the young people outside your door, not the traitors to democracy that you invited to your table. We want to work. We want good union jobs that pay a living wage. We want a brighter, more hopeful future. And I think you do too, President Biden. Why else would you have run on the slogan, Build Back Better?
The Biden administration officials have mostly been receptive to working alongside progressives. And wasn't it nice to see all those young people doing the work? Charles, you were there. Can you give us a sense of what it was like?
Well, I want to say it was very, like a lot of actions by Sunrise, it was very well choreographed, well executed. The ability to put out, 50 or 100 disciplined young people in t-shirts, following a script It may seem like that's easy to do, but it is not, especially on the left. But they did it, and they made a successful point that the parts of the climate movement that have been giving the Biden administration some leeway are losing patience. And we know that they're planning another action on the 28th of June, and that other organizations that care about these issues as well are gearing up for mobilization on June 24th. I'm thinking now of a CPD-led coalition that's planning a march in Washington, D.C. But above all, I think what we're witnessing is the tentative first steps of organizations that came of age under a Trump administration, figuring out what it means to pressure a sitting Democratic president, presumably allowing them more traction to get what they want, but not really having the experience of winning on this kind of terrain.
Interesting. So many on the left had expressed enthusiasm for some of the hires that the White House made, including some who worked on the joint task force formed with Biden's campaign and Senator Bernie Sanders during the Democratic presidential primary early in the administration. Are the members of the Sunrise Movement, still working from both within and without to pressure the Biden administration to do what's right on climate?
There's a lot that we don't know. It's interesting to note that there were 3 demands issued by the protesters that day. One of them was to stop meeting with Republicans, which isn't really a demand around the legislation. The second one was to talk to them, which suggests that they were not really being included in the conversations. And the third was for the inclusion of a civilian conservation corps, an example of the soft infrastructure that they want. And I was just trying to, put the things together for myself. Is a civilian conservation corps really the central demand for how to make sure that we never pass 350 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere? Is that really what's going to prevent an additional 1.5% Celsius in global warming?
Yeah.
These are questions we didn't really get answers to. But like I said, my sense is that folks are figuring out what to do. They don't quite have the plan yet.
Yeah, I noticed that the pre-printed signs were about jobs and not about dying from weather chaos or any, wildfires, any of the things that crop failure, any of the things that are associated with the climate crisis.
It just turns out that being boiled slowly alive, if you live on a coast or really anywhere on the planet, isn't enough of a motivation. And, voters,
what's up with that?
Voters need things
Sunrise
like
Movement is just one step above Extinction Rebellion in terms of, really being out there in terms of the environment. So you don't have any special insight on why they're focused on jobs? Is it just because that's what they thought they could get done in the infrastructure bill and the rest of it's going to have to be done some other way? Or what are we looking at here?
I'm thinking we should probably at some point have one of them on to tell us how they evolved to this position. But my sense, looking at the climate movement in general and thinking about the separation between big green organizations on the one hand and environmental justice communities on the other, that what they're trying to do is not discuss the climate in isolation, but always draw the connection between the climate crisis, which is unfolding, and the actual impact on people's lives, which can be expressed not just as being too hot, but also unemployment, financial collapse, not being able to survive in this capitalist hellscape.
Yeah, that is a problem. So we're seeing on a greater scale in a kind of the macro here, we're seeing activists kind of start taking to the streets, as you said at the beginning, start pushing Biden. Do you think they're going to are we going to be able to make the leap between like hateful resistance or whatever you want to call it, impassioned resistance to, hey, you may actually be pushable? How do we do that tactically without losing our the ear that President Biden has offered?
What I'm going to say might not make anyone happy, but the logic of mass movements and mobilization is that it can take months for it to develop into a nice head of steam. And we're not really seeing energy for that happening among the organizations of the former resistance. We're also not seeing any political factor that would impact the legislative process. It doesn't look like the filibuster is going away. It doesn't look like Senators Sinema and Manchin are going to fold and be nice with the other 48 Democratic colleagues. It's a really tough situation. And I think a lot of the activist parts, all of the activists aren't quite sure where and how to expend their political capital. If they waste it by demanding too much too fast, then they've lost it. If they wait, it might never have a chance to be used properly. So what do? What's your advice to the Sunrise Movement and to everyone else who wants to see the planet not divest itself of human life?
Well, my suggestion would be to play yes and, right? Like, yes, we like what you're doing and we want this, to do the pressure and to do it with a sense of support for President Biden for what he is doing that is along the lines of what anyone would want who would want to save the planet. I really think we need to support anyone who might listen to us and at the same time pressure that person. So I think we might have to change our tactic from hell no, we won't go to great job, keep rolling. We also want this.
Well, we've seen Sunrise Movement participate in really massive mobilizations on the ground and civil disobedience. And a lot of times those are, sort of carefully staged events designed for a particular part of the strategy. What we haven't really seen yet is a full-on mobilization against a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate and a Democratic Congress. We have not seen that energy for a long time. I'm talking about what we saw at the Dakota Access pipeline fight, or what we saw in Occupy Wall Street. We haven't seen that, but energy for it is building from below. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I think that we will stay tuned, and I I think that's really great. My concern goes almost to sort of the media. We have a leftist media that is, well, we don't have a leftist media. We have a part of a media that's independent who it seems that their values would be in line with what's happening on the left, but they continue to attack the left, which then goes to give fodder to the right wing and to peel independence off of any kind of association with the Democrats. And my concern a little bit is that the kind of protests that throw the person who is a little bit closer to what you might want under the bus might lead us back to another Trump, who is certainly not going to say no to the Dakota Access Pipeline.
It's funny you should mention that. I've been thinking lately about how generation of young activists who came of age politically during the failed Bernie Sanders run or the successful, election of Donald Trump are frustrated. They feel that the world is changing in bad ways. There's desperate need for change, and young people don't have enough power, especially if you have belong to a marginalized group with lots of pent up needs and demands. And when you're in that situation, it really is much easier to punch the people directly next to you or immediately above you as an alternative to marshaling your forces and attacking the main enemy, the ruling class of this country, and making sure that we have the ability to walk and chew gum at the same time, to work together in larger and larger formations that have power, while also having good conversations about what kind of tactics and strategies might work. But the Patreon left seems all too willing to fight for their ability to criticize everyone without also making sure that we have enough power as a collective.
I think this is going to require another segment, Charles, but I'm glad you were here for this, and it was great to have your opinions and thoughts, and also the fact that you were there at the Sunrise Rally. Talk again about the actions that are coming up.
Well, just that I know that on the 24th, there's going to be a mobilization led by CPD, the Center for Popular Democracy. Their materials are talking about 5,000 or 7,000 participants being brought in. And the goal is, of course, to make sure that lots of different human needs are addressed in the next budget's passed by the Biden administration. They're talking about housing, about healthcare, a lot of things that we care about. On the 28th, Sunrise Movement is planning an action also in Washington, D.C. I don't have full details on that, but seeing these two things together makes me think that the part of the left that is trying to straddle the, work from the outside, work from the inside camps at the same time, they are gearing up slowly, judiciously, but they're moving in that direction.
That's exciting, and we will stay tuned, and we will report all about it here on pushing Biden left on act.tv. So if you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Please tell your friends and leave a comment wherever you're watching, because obviously we must feed the corporate algorithms that allow us so far to talk like this to you. Coming up next, the progressive movement headlines. Stay tuned. All right, we're off to the headlines. I know if you've been watching Act TV, you know this segment. I've been doing it for a while, and we've brought it back due to popular demand. So here we go. This week in progressive movement, after growing pressure by grassroots activists, Amazon has extended its moratorium on police use of its controversial facial recognition technology, which fuels the over-policing of Black and brown communities. It has already led to false arrests and multiple incarcerations of innocent Black men. Amazon's technology is called Rekognition, with a K, as in K. The company first began the moratorium, not a ban, of course, but a temporary moratorium. They started it 1 year ago this month during the wave of racial justice protests you may recall were sparked by the police killing of George Floyd. How convenient. I'm sure it's going to make, it's going to make us like Amazon more, while at the same time they're union busting and paying their workers starvation wages and working them until they have miscarriages. Anyway, at that time, critics called the moratorium nothing more than a public relations stunt. This re-upping of this moratorium, again, is probably just another public relations stunt. Maisha Hayes, director of the campaign strategies at Media Justice, which is leading the Eyes on Amazon Week. That's the hashtag. You can follow it on the Twitters. And it's also a part of the Protest Amazon campaign ongoing. Said in a statement, Amazon's recent decision to silently extend the moratorium on selling their racist and biased surveillance facial recognition tool to the police shows that the company understands that the public is mobilized against the danger recognition technology poses. Amazon's surveillance empire fuels militarized policing. Protesters are demanding that Amazon permanently divest from facial recognition technology and cut ties with police and ICE. The protest Amazon action is led by digital rights groups Fight for the Future and is joined by Color of Change, Demand Progress, Free Press, Empower Change, Public Citizen, Presente.org, Roots Action, and everybody, all the other organizations that are demanding Amazon permanently divest from what campaign organizers call racist surveillance, tech and police state surveillance. The campaign is also calling on the company to end its complicity in U.S. immigration and custom enforcement deportations. For more on this, go to protestamazon.org. Charles, your thoughts on this particular action?
Well, it's a good cause, to be sure, but I'm thinking I'm remembering reading cyberpunk novels as a young man in the 80s and thinking, oh my God, have we really reached the point where the corporate surveillance fascist state is going to be ushered in by middle-class homeowners wanting a goddamn camera to put on their doorbell to prevent packages from being stolen? And the answer seems to be yes, that is in fact what is happening to us. But I also want to make the point that these anti-Amazon campaigns designed to persuade Amazon to please don't do a terrible thing, thank you very much. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a government that invested in regulation that would make sure that corporate monopolies didn't have this much power and that citizens' privacy, safety, and security could be manifested without handing over all power to a corporation?
Exactly. And I do think some of what Protest Amazon is doing is asking for regulation in this area. Thanks, Charles, for that info. Again, you can go to protestamazon.org. On to our next story. In other Amazon is destroying your future news, Whole Foods, once the nation's largest center for earthy, crunchy granola types to get our patchouli on, has come under fire for its enormous plastic footprint. Now, of course, owned by Amazon, Whole Foods is being pressured by more than 130 organizations to decrease their single-use plastic container usage by 25%. We have an image. I think you've been to Whole Foods. They're not just talking about water bottles. They are talking about the plastic containers that Whole Foods sends, a specific amount of carrots. There they are, that you can, your pre-cut pineapple slices. They use a ton of it, and these organizations are asking them to decrease them by 25%. A recent Greenpeace report showed that even friggin' Walmart is better on reducing plastic waste than Whole Foods. Meanwhile, in Australia, New South Wales, the government there has vowed to ban all, and they mean all, single-use plastics in the state by 2025. That means no more bags, no more plastic knives, no more plastic forks, no more plastic nothing. So Whole Foods, if a quarter of a continent can reach a 100% ban by 2025, I think you can reach at least 25%. And to the petite bourgeois shopping at Whole Foods because you care about the environment, it might be time to find a local farm share or maybe go to Walmart. For more information on this action, see the Zero Waste campaign of the U.S. Public Interest Research Groups. My first job in activism, by the way, was with the PIRGs. Charles, your thoughts on pressuring Whole Foods to do the right thing?
Cats are living with dogs. I mean, what are we coming to when Walmart is doing better than Whole Foods? It's some environmental thing. Next, you'll be telling me that Whole Foods organic food isn't quite organic enough. But the real issue here is maybe to stop thinking of Whole Foods as an especially environmentally friendly company to begin with. Whole Foods is based on one principle, that sometimes you want to shop with people of the same race and ethnicity as you are. That's what it is.
Let me tell you something. I do sometimes shop at Whole Foods, and people are not going in there. They are sending people of different races than they are to go buy their foods using those Instacart delivery methods. It's basically Instacart shoppers for fancy
Yes.
people.
I think you're right, but I also think that Amazon is in many ways an excellent target for public campaigns of all sorts. So, good on these campaigners for choosing a soft target. I predict that they're going to win, and that Whole Foods will remain one of the largest anti-union grocers that simultaneously is slightly less terrible for the earth than the other ones.
Yeah, they have to maintain that, if this kind of news gets out, one of the reasons I'm reporting on it is so this kind of news gets out. So please share this newscast with your friends so that people can realize that Whole Foods, as you said, Charles, is not the place where you're protecting the earth. It's not the place where, you're buying organics so that the soil doesn't get eroded or destroyed. This is, they are, since they've been taken over by Amazon, they're worse than Walmart. And I think that kind of says enough. Moving on to our next story, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program turns 9 this week. And activists are holding a rally in D.C. to both mark the occasion and push for a formal path to citizenship. The DACA program allows young undocumented immigrants to work legally in the U.S. and live without fear of deportation, at least for a period of time, before the program crumbs up for renewal once again and throws thousands of families into fear and uncertainty. Nice thing we do to people, yes? Activism by undocumented youth originally won the DACA program during the Obama administration, and street activism has protected it for nearly a decade. Undocumented youth and their allies bravely, and I mean bravely, fought back when even Trump tried to kill the program. And Trump would have gladly rounded up the protesters and thrown them in a for-profit ICE prison. I'm honestly surprised he didn't do that, but anyway, the protesters won. While undocumented youth and their allies are commemorating the win, they're also marking the anniversary by pushing leaders to act on a permanent relief, a pathway to citizenship. United We Dream Executive Director Garisa Martinez Rosas said that Democrats cannot allow Republicans to keep progress from happening this year, and that Democrats can and must lead on their own through the reconciliation process. The Dream and Promise Act is actually getting a historic hearing in the Senate after passing the House in March. The bill, which also covers the TPS, temporary protected status folks, and the deferred enforcement departure holders, stands to affect at least 3 million immigrants and untold numbers of their families and loved ones. Maybe Marco Rubio, if it gets to the Senate, will have to vote to pass it, since he represents all those immigrant communities in Florida who voted for him and against all their own best interests there. And in case you don't care about actual humanity or just need some fact fodder to throw down in a conversation with a Trumper, findings released by the Center for American Progress and the University of California's Davis Global Migration Center this week said that passing the Dream and Promise Act would provide a massive boost to the nation's economy. It would increase the U.S. GDP by a cumulative total of $799 billion over 10 years and create 285,400 new jobs. What can't be calculated is the relief that a pathway to citizenship stands to bring to undocumented youth and their families who continue to have to live their daily lives from court decision to court decision. Charles, your thoughts on the progress that these folks have made and where we're going from here?
Well, my heart goes out to these young people, not quite as young as they were 9 years ago, but these young people, it's really, Paul, it's shameful for our country to not be able to resolve this. But Republicans, I have a question. You've already proven that Latinos don't vote for the Democrats nearly as much as you thought they would. They're not going to flip Texas anytime soon. They're not going to flip Florida necessarily. Give it up. Let them in. Maybe they'll work hard, become small business owners, and vote for you in the ballot box someday. It just seems like if you won't come to a compromise that lets these kids stay and be okay and have citizenship, that you're really dooming your brand for generations to come.
Always a good point made my comrade in arms, as they say, or in disarms, Charles Lenchner. Finally, our final story today for the Progressive Movement headlines. PayPal and Venmo are under fire for closing accounts for websites that host controversial but legal content. PayPal has refused to process payments to whistleblower websites like WikiLeaks, and last year Venmo was sued for targeting payments associated with Islam or Arab nationalities or ethnicity. There are also numerous examples of sex worker advocates facing account closure. Nearly 24 rights groups, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Arab Center for the Advancement of Social Media, the Center for LGBTQ Economic Advancement and Research, Demand, Progress, Education Fund, and more, have joined together to tell PayPal and its subsidiary, Venmo, to base its policies on the Santa Clara Principles on Transparency and Accountability in Content Moderation. It's a set of principles developed by free expression advocates and scholars to help companies center human rights when moderating user-generated content and accounts. To find out more, you can contact Electronic Frontier Foundation. And yes, you heard correctly, Venmo is a subsidiary now of PayPal. Remember when Venmo, we all used to go there to get away from PayPal because they were horrid? Well, that party's over, apparently. Hey, Charles, do you remember in 2019 when religious groups and conservatives were boycotting PayPal after they found out that it worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center to help identify accounts to ban from the payment platform? Like the Uber Christians were mad because Southern Poverty Law Center listed several Christian organizations as hate groups or extremists because they were hate groups and extremists. Remember that, Charles?
I remember that, and I'm reflecting on another factoid that's been true for a while, which is that the largest adult entertainment websites right now are no longer able to accept Visa, MasterCard, or American Express credit card payments. And what they do accept, of course, is Bitcoin. So I'm seeing that the financial industry is basically telling the population, if you want to be able to spend and raise money freely, you're going to have to do it without us. And I have a feeling that the market is going to accommodate this, and we're going to see greater chatter about Bitcoin type currencies as an alternative to letting these financial giants dictate what we can and can't do.
Well, one of the reasons that the financial giants pulled out of some of these adult content sites was because of pressure from child safety and child protection places, because they were forwarding child kiddie porn, basically, or underage pornogaphy, or non-consensual pornography, or girlfriend videos, things like that.
there's no question that that industry needs to be policed to the extent that, that kind of video production doesn't exist anymore. But I'm really not sure I'm comfortable having this be the main topic. What I'll say is when you combine that with activists and special parts of our community not being able to access the support that they want, you see that there's always going to be some argument as to why depriving people of the ability to send each other money is somehow in the greater good of society. But my sense is that society right now, today, is more threatened by tech giants closing off options for consumers and businesses than it is the other way around. So in that sense, I am on the side of people who are figuring out a way to, help Etsy and OnlyFans people survive without recourse to Venmo and PayPal than I am into getting Venmo and PayPal to temporarily give a moratorium on their evil actions.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had, say, a state, again, going back to your point from before, that actually prosecuted and have enough staff and had enough influx of money to stop the kiddie porn before it reached the camera, the abuse of youngsters? We can talk about that again in another segment. Thanks for joining me on the Progressive News Movement Headlines. Charles, I liked having you here. Usually it's just me, and it was great to have you here too.
Thank you.
On to our next segment.
Well, we're going to go now and talk about. President Biden is hoping the Senate will confirm former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel as ambassador to Japan. But another name might hold him up, Laquan McDonald. For anyone who doesn't remember, McDonald was murdered by Chicago cops on the night of October 20th, 2014. Footage of the murder was kept secret by then Mayor Emanuel until after he was reelected. The officer who committed the murder was later convicted of second-degree murder. The key point here, and we mustn't lose sight of it, is that Emanuel is complicit in supporting the Chicago Police Department's murderers. The department itself is widely noted as being riddled with racist violence for decades. By hiding the footage of the murder from the public, he wasn't just protecting the cops involved or the department itself. He was also making sure that he himself could get reelected. After the massive wave of protests and uprisings across the country since the murder of George Floyd, one might think that Biden could find other luminaries from the Democratic Party to support as ambassador to Japan, a key ally, an economic superpower. Alas, such is not the case. Juliana, what are your first thoughts here?
Well, Rahm Emanuel has not had a great reputation in many areas. So this is kind of what we could expect there. And having lived in Chicago, Chicago is known for its corrupt government. So I don't expect much more there, but I feel like maybe I should.
Well, to help us figure this out today, we've invited Richie Sergienko, who is with Roots Action and has been helping with the campaign to push Biden left by going after the nominees like Neera Tanden that clearly progressives are very unhappy with. So my first question to Richie is there anything else about this issue overall that you want us to remember?
I just think Rahm Emanuel embodies the corruption of the neoliberal establishment, and the fact that this guy continues to get opportunities. He's done a lot of things, but covering up the murder of Laquan McDonald should basically never allow him to work in politics again. But the way that the Democratic establishment is lined up is that someone with his connections to money and power, he's seen as valuable to the party, despite being an evil person that would cover up the murder of a teenager.
Well, it makes me wonder if Biden owes the progressive part of the party as he does, why then the insistence on nominating truly despicable people like Rahm Emanuel, who are widely perceived to be actually despicable people?
Well, he owes progressives a little bit, right? A tiny slice of the pie, but Joe Biden is heavily entrenched in the Democratic establishment and owes a lot to the Clinton wing as well, wouldn't you say? And so, you know, it's our job as from the left to push and pull and fight the establishment. And you know, I don't know if Joe Biden owes us anything, but we're certainly going to organize, agitate, and do everything in our power to get what we want.
How are activists, especially from the Black Lives Matter movement, responding to the elevation of Emmanuel at this time?
Yeah, so the pressure coming out of Chicago recently has been pretty powerful. You know, not only activists in Chicago's, but the families of people that have been impacted by and the families that have been impacted by police violence while Rahm Emanuel was mayor of Chicago. You know, Laquan McDonald was a horrible situation and he covered it up, but that wasn't the only police murder of young Black men in Chicago while Rahm was there. And basically he enabled this kind of behavior, as all Democratic mayors do. And they fund the police departments with billions of dollars. And so Rahm Emanuel has funded state-sanctioned violence of Black folks in Chicago for years. And so it's been pretty powerful to see the families of police brutality in Chicago speak out. You can read the statement. It's pinned at Roots Action's Twitter right now. And there's been a lot of media coming out about this because honestly, how can Joe Biden and the Democratic Party say that Black Lives Matter when they are going to elevate someone like Rahm Emanuel, who, you know, Joe Biden had George Floyd's family come to the White House and, you know, there's this whole public charade. Well, that's not enough for us to say Black Lives Matter and to host the families of police violence at the White House. It should be action. And that's what the families are calling for in this statement. They say Rahm Emanuel is the antithesis of Black Lives Matter. You nominating Rahm Emanuel goes against everything that stands for.
Well, Democrats have a problem. It might be that supporting cops and cop unions is a Republican selling point. It might be that some of the worst abuses are committed by cops that we can point to as being, you know, right-wing in addition to being murderous. But it's also true that the cities where these murders are happening are often run by Democratic mayors. And we've seen this in Atlanta, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and in New York, that having a Democratic mayor seems to have very little impact on whether or not the police have free license to shoot people in the streets. That's a very uncomfortable political fact to take into account. What do you think ought to be done? And maybe what are you doing in Los Angeles to reflect that kind of approach?
Well, one, the assumption shouldn't be that this is a right or left issue. Democrats love cops and they love funding cops. So, excuse me, the Democratic establishment is heavily entrenched in the imperialist police state of America. You know what I mean? So, you know, I don't think it's a right or left issue. I think that Democrats are fully accepting of what is going on in America with police violence. And it's evident because in Los Angeles, just this year, LAPD has shot 17 people. There's a separate department, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, that has killed 18 people since the death of George Floyd, right? And so these examples of police violence are all around the country in Democratic run cities. And so what needs to be done is the assumption that Democrats are somehow the good guys. In a lot of situations, they're not, because, you know, when Rahm Emanuel and Eric Garcetti fund these police departments with billions of dollars, they are funding state-sanctioned violence against Black and brown folks in marginalized communities. And so, in Los Angeles, I organize with a group called the People's City Council, and we are part of the People's Budget LA Coalition that is working to defund the police and to implement a participatory budgeting process to the budget. Because in LA, LAPD gets $3 billion of our citywide budget. That's 48% of the general funds. And this is a direct connection to Rahm Emanuel as well. Like, these Democratic mayors, these neoliberal mayors, are funding this state-sanctioned violence. And we should not pretend that Democrats have the moral authority on this issue. Like, Democrats fund this just as much as Republicans do.
Well, granted, taking in your point, but let's focus on what Roots Action in particular is doing to sort of lead the fight against this. Explain about or mention maybe the petition that Roots Action has going on, and what the progress of this campaign has looked like from your end.
Yeah, absolutely. So Roots Action has been pretty instrumental in these campaigns on the targets that we set out. With Neera Tanden, we had a very successful campaign against her, sending over I think 30,000 emails. We had a Twitter storm where we trended nationally, and then we rolled over that to a campaign against Rahm Emanuel. And so far, over 34,000 emails have been sent through Roots Action's campaign. You can visit notorahm.org to see our petition and send an email to your senators. And so we're kind of building that activist power to, tweet about it, to get these articles out, to use our hashtag regret. Joe Biden's going to regret nominating him, but use the hashtag reject Rahm, and, put this kind of pressure, this public pressure, because they think that they can, just go about this and, nominate their buddy Rahm Emanuel. But fortunately, Roots Action has not been I'm proud to work for Roots Action, because they are not afraid to put their nose out there and say, hey, these are our principles, and, it doesn't matter who Rahm Emanuel is and how much power he has, we are against him. And so people have responded to that and sent 35,000 emails so far.
Richie, cut to the chase. Is this a fight progressives can win?
Absolutely. We just need to stay on it. And unveiling Rahm Emanuel's corruption and his evil, and, just raising awareness and making a bunch of noise about that is something that we can do. And, you can chalk up win however you want, Charles. Maybe Rahm getting the position, but us building this coalition of folks that are ready to fight, that is still considered a win. And better than anyone, the left is used to losing, right? But we're building power, and we're gonna come for that. At some point, we're gonna get what we want. It may not be with Rahm Emanuel's nomination, but we're building power to make sure our time is coming.
Thank you very much. That's Richie Sergienko from Roots Action talking about Rahm Emanuel. Julianna, what can you give us after listening to that segment? What are your thoughts?
You don't want to know. I don't know. I think, it's, I had a lot of lingering questions. Just why Rahm Emanuel for this particular position is the question I have. Why is he chosen? Just, I think I heard, was it just kind of favoritism, or does he have some sort of thing he is supposed to be offering here?
Free subscription to act.tv's YouTube channel to the first commenter who mentions the Trilateral Commission. How's that?
Free subscription to the YouTube channel for anyone watching, but we do appreciate the comments. Yeah, I just had so many questions about, Rahm Emanuel's, we'll have to pick it up at another time, just looking into Rahm Emanuel's history in other areas and why he is particularly being, other than, is it just favoritism, or, get the old boys network back together, that you believe he is being asked to do this position, or is it signaling something to someone that Ram is being asked to do this position, or what's the deal there?
Well, the deal right now is progressives have a veal pen and it's got Rahm Emanuel's name on it. And we can't wait to put him in there. And with that, thank you, Richie, for being in this segment. And I'm turning it over to Juliana to,
Yes, thank
the
you.
show.
Thank you, Richie, and thank you, Charles.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and fuck Rahm Emanuel.
Yes, we can swear. We decided on that at the beginning of the, and we hope you enjoyed that. My name is Julianna Forlano. Been here with Charles Lenchner, both of us here of Act TV, and we hope to be bringing you more of this kind of show. Please leave your comments and thoughts wherever you are watching this, and keep a lookout. Definitely subscribe to Act TV on YouTube. Definitely hit the little bell so that you will know when we start doing this live. And pretty soon we'll be able to take a look at your comments while we are live in the show and incorporate them into our questions, our interviews, our thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.